Fire, you listen to me. I don't care what you do once this thing's over with. You can lay down and die and...
Bonanza loved his horse, the gentle giant who made the group feel welcome and funny screen, but Dan Blocker worked behind the scenes. The man who was Hose had a story to tell. Tense and full of unexpected turns, one of his sons, who is now 66 years old, has to confirm what has been thought for a long time. Something new he learned about his father could change what fans thought they knew. But before we talk about these revelations, you need to know about the early events that made his son come out with these long-kept secrets. The 14 PBA star is born. Little Joe may have won people over with his good looks and charm, but it was his right that the gentle giant who really won our hearts with his humble personality and pure innocence and a heart as pure as gold. Hose, he became more than just a character. Loved one who represents warmth and strength in equal parts. Born as Bobby Boxer Dan Davis on December 10, 1928 in the state of Texas, Dan came into the world with an incredible 14-pound bang pounds. This birth set a new record. Just the start of a bigger-than-life story. Being raised in the small town of Odin, Texas, Dan spent his early years getting help at the family store that he carried bags for people and soaked up the values of small towns that shaped his good and steady spirit. Dan started working when he was 10 years old. Next to each other with grown men pulling grain and working to build he was very strong, and his neighbors called him by that name, which fit. By age 12, he had already reached the big banana. 6 feet tall and tipped the scales. Some tough guys in the area even tried at 200 pounds. Dan always beat them when they played fight. After high school, Dan went to his school was the Texas Military Institute. Did great on the football field. Because he was athletic, he got a football grant to attend Sioux State University. He was a big 64-year-old 275-pound man back then. There, hard to ignore, it was there this time, a new dream began. Was lit, but he didn't know it. Not yet, when his college theater group needed someone to help move heavy props. They called on Dan, who was strong enough to. He was the obvious choice, but what as a simple favor led to his first small part in a production of Old and New. Lace Up. Your first acting experience caught his attention. Dan felt the thrill of the stage and quickly changed his attention to English to something else as his major, theater. Even though he was offered to play college football, Dan chose instead to follow his heart and become an actor. Led him to New York City in the end. He went to try to make it on Broadway. In time his hard work and skill paid off, gave him a part in a play of King Lear, being a big step in his journey about going to Hollywood. But as life would have it, it took a bizarre new turn. Was just pork chop that lived around the corner. The violence in the hills. After college, Dan Blocker was buying and selling books for army fatigues when he joined the He is ready to serve his country in the U.S. Army. But it wasn't easy to make this change. Over 6 feet 3 inches tall and about 300 pounds, Blocker was a huge man, and his just being that big made things more difficult, for it took a whole month just to find boots that will fit his huge feet. Blocker quickly found feet that were once dressed himself away from home, and in the middle of the Korean War, by Christmas 1951, was sent to the front lines near Chwon, North Korea as part of the 179th Combat Infantry Regiment as an infantry unit. The strength of Sergeant Blocker, and he was a force to be because he was tough. Taken into account every day, he and his other soldiers fought in terrible battles. Being woken up by the biting cold days and nights and the constant threat of enemy fire for almost 7 months, Blocker walked through trench warfare. The air was filled with the sound of explosions as he led his men through some of the worst. There was a lot of intense fighting in the war. One night, when things were crazy and the gunfire, Blocker saw one of his fellow soldiers in desperate need, pinned down and couldn't move. Without hesitating, pushed forward through the firestorm. It was him pulling his fellow soldier to safety. A brave act that would leave him getting hurt earned him a Purple Heart that he wore as a sign of bravery. Pride, be quiet. As the fierce battles on, it was hard to get up Pork Chop Hill. During the Korean War, a place where just making it through felt like a win. Here, Blocker and his troops fought on the defense of every inch of land on the front lines in a spot where every hill and valley came with a price. It was hard work, worked for months without a break. Combat. Blocker was finally taken out of the picture. Body hurt, but spirit not broken, sent to a hospital to get better from the wounds of battle. When he finally got back home, the things Dan Blocker had with him were, though, memories of how hard war was he had fought with honor, and had changed him, he spoke out more. Enemy of war, especially military interventions that used force. Seeing how destructive power can be of violence firsthand, he turned into a strong supporter of peace who condemns the terrible things that happen in war, especially the terrible use of napalm. How Dan Blocker fame. When Dan Blocker came back when he got home from the Korean War, he was ready to leave the battlefield behind and pay attention on making a family-filled life, and reason he married the girl he met in college, Dorothy Parker, and the two of them would raise 4 kids and make a warm, and he was grounded by his loving family life. After the chaos of war began to act was never part of his plans for life had a shocking turn for the tall Texan on the hunt for his doctorate. Blocker moved to California and quickly signed up at UCLA. Before his huge frame and a clear southern charm caught the looked at by casting agents from Hollywood at the westerns used to be all over TV, and Blocker seemed like it was made for the genre. His strong presence and his good looks made him a perfect fit for the western, asked for rough and tumble roles. Soon, he was being given small parts in well-known shows, the start of his journey. Western shows with bit roles like he brought an 18-gauge gun and a Colt .45. Clear signs of warmth and humor to each. During the 1950s, he played a character. The Blocker slowly built his resume, being on well-known shows like The Rifleman Has Gun, Will Go on Trip, and Maverick. Even though he sometimes in movies, it was TV that really caught his attention. In 1957, he got his getting their first big break, getting a big part in The Restless Gun, and how he played it hit home with audiences and opened doors to even more chances. Soon after, he was cast as Tiny over and over again. Boinger, a cute and funny ranch hand. This character went to Cimarron City and him to show off his natural sense of humor, timing, and gave hints about the charisma that would make him well known. The big break for Blocker didn't take long to come. Finally came around, he got the part of his right to be on Bonanza, a part that would make his place in TV official. Dan made history and made him famous. Dan Blocker's defining role on Bonanza. When Blocker got the part of his Cartwright in this part of the hit TV show Bonanza would change not only his job but make him well known all over the United States as Ho, the kind-hearted and tall son. After his family name, Dan became a furniture in living rooms from coast to coast. Ho's was a kind giant, a person who they might not have been the sharpest of the but made up for it in spades and with his big heart and honest. Being kind people, especially kids, quickly really liked how honest Hoss was. His charm and his unwavering devotion to Dan's loved ones were important to him. He was more than just a player, he was a way to say what he thinks and values. Thanks to the words of Stephen Grett, a Quaker missionary in the 18th century who pushed to do all the good you can. Dan brought this idea to people through. In the background there was a sense of Dan naturally cares about fairness and kindness himself that made Hoss's kindness feel good, real, and it made him stand out in the hearts of viewers. Even though Ho's Dan was shown to be simple and innocent, he himself was a smart and he was a thoughtful man with a master's degree in theater and had a great heart for it, for writing and thinking about ideas, showing how well he balanced tenderness with a strong instinct to protect something that rang true in his own life. As a decorated veteran of the Korean War who knew both the value and the cost of conflict of peace, Dan's strong frame for sure made him a great choice for the part of Ho's, but it was his gentle nature that brought the character to life. Just Dan has been acting for 2 years. Became a part of one of TV's major well-known families behind the scenes. He became close friends with his Lauren Green and Michael Landon, who play co-stars. There was a bond between the 3 men that went. Dan did more than just act, he was also best man at Lynn and Michael Landon's wedding, not proof of the deep connection. Even so, Bonanza kept him busy. Dan sometimes tried his hand at movies, performing with Frank Sinatra in movies like Lady and Come Blow Your Horn and Cement. Even though his fame was growing, he never forgot where he came from in the small town of O'Donnell, Texas. The people back home were very proud of the quiet, gentle boy who had grown up to be a TV star who brings joy to a million. Reasons why Dan Blocker quit Hollywood. The way Dan Blocker plays Ho's Cartwright. He became famous after his role on Bonanza. Even though he never wanted fame, actively looked for, with his gentle personality and strong build, he became a beloved figure. He was a well-known face on American TV, but not happy about the attention that came their way with his success. Acting was what he loved to do. But the attention that came after him, he had trouble with something everywhere. Embrace he would have liked to pay attention to on his craft in silence, but his skills and the love of his fans made being anonymous is impossible. As much as Dan he loved his fans and found the loss of own space, his huge size made it hard to miss. He was easy to spot, and even a simple trip with the family could go badly if fans rushed to be close to him. On one reason to take a trip to Yucatan meant to be a quiet escape quickly became a public spectacle, as people in the area right away recognized him, calling out no matter where he went. To his Cartwright, a lot of actors didn't want to stay in the spotlight. In 1970, he and his family went on a trip to Switzerland, was moved by the stunning. He loved the beauty of the Swiss lake country. Had read in National Geographically, they were interested in the beautiful scenery around Lakes Comme Mire and Swiss and Lugano, as well as the idyllic beautiful views and the chance to live it. Felt like a dream come true when the family quickly chose to move to Switzerland. They found not only their new home here peaceful, but also a high quality, getting an international education for their kids who did well in their new. Rumors went around about the environment, reasons why Blocker wants to move abroad. Some people thought he was having money problems. But he ignored them, claims that made it clear that Bonanza had him quite wealthy. His choice has nothing to do with money. Instead, he longed for a life without the fame and its pressures. In Switzerland, Bonanza shone in German, making a language that stopped him from enjoying his surroundings without being. Always knew what the Swiss countryside had to offer Dan, the peace he had been looking for. In spite of his success, he stayed humble and firmly planted and very aware of the privileges because of his job. He often worried about the people who, especially teachers, who weren't paid enough, whom he deeply admired. With a moving when it comes to his own career, he even admitted that there was some irony in his wealth. Said, "Let's face it, I sold out for money," but he sometimes thought about the idea of going back to teaching. His fame as a carter made it hard to go back to a quieter place. Dan Blocker's fight against a simpler life. Racism in the 1960s. The cast and crew of Bonanza often went to different. One trip took them to film locations to a part of the southern United States still deeply wrapped up in the painful battle with racial apartheid. Even after the civil rights movement, there was a push for change. Prejudice was still strong, and many hotels, restaurants, and theaters were turned down to serve black people. During one of these trips, the Bonanza cast got to a hotel, only to be told that their members who are African American would not be able to stay because of the business is discriminatory rules. The whole crew was shocked and angry about this obvious act of Dan. Blocker is known for his work on injustice and kind spirit. Stepped forward with a hammer. Resolve without hesitation, he said if the hotel refused to take them in first everyone, then no one from the cast. And Dan said the crew would stay there, but they didn't. They were only a threat. Promise. At that time he showed that his sense of what was fair wasn't just limited to the parts he played on TV and movies. It was a part of who Dan Blocker was. Dedication to justice was as strong as being physically present. Under his gentle behavior was a deep-seated dislike for any kind of abuse or bullying. In an interview in 1964, he said, "I hate it because I'm a big man. I don't like being picked on. I do not like fights. But if I see a 180-pound guy beating up a 130-pound guy, I swear I'll take care of the big guy in a hurry." Dan knew how strong it was of his own size and strength, but he saw it as a duty or a gift that was meant to keep other people from scare him into taking a brave stand against racial bias. Was present during his time on Bonanza. Says a lot about his show character. By not accepting unfairness, he showed how what a person does can challenge the what's going on inside Dan Blocker's food. Dan Blocker wasn't just known for his obsession for his tall stature and good heart. Besides nature, he was also known for huge appetite, which was as outsized as unique as the people who knew him couldn't help but be amazed at he'd put away as much food as he could every morning. Start with a feast that would be hard for most people to understand: 12 eggs, 2 loaves of bread, and 2 a glass of milk to start the day. As the hours went by, he'd add more to his plate, full of bread, potatoes, meat, and more bread, finishing off servings that other people left. Dan's hunger was in every way stunned. True to his Texan roots, Dan Fame liked Hardy's low-country meals a lot. One of his favorite treats was a whole ham that had been roasted that he could easily eat everything by himself. He wasn't one for greens and fruits, but he had a well-known sweet tooth, especially when he loved cakes, pies, and cookies for a good meal that filled you up even longer. Dan turned his business ideas into a co-owner of the Ponderosa Steakhouse, a nod to the well-known Cartwright. The restaurant is a family ranch on Bonanza. Served just the right amount of satisfactory fare that Dan loved as a co-owner. He got to, you can eat for free at any Ponderosa place, but even as he enjoyed these perks, Dan knew that keeping up with Haas's well-known picture needed some work. Follow the rules that Hollywood wants means he had to keep his love for food and the real world of show business. He went on and off of strict diets, intense exercise to try to stay in shape for his part, but the urge to it was often hard to get his favorite foods. Fight back and keep his emotions in check. Relationship with food and the plenty of meals that were on set. His weight would frequently change as the show's seasons went on. His body was hurt by the ups and downs. Had a hard time with the constant yo-yo. When he stopped dieting, he needed to put on weight. Keep the well-known larger-than-life the way Hose looks on screen still. Dan's the legendary hunger never went away, and the cast and crew would be amazed as he dealt with meal after meal with unwavering excitement when there were no cameras around rolling. Dan's love of food kept going to surprise everyone around him as he had anyone in the room without not even breaking a sweat. In normal surgeries, things went badly in the early 1970s when the Vietnam War caused political unrest in the United States. Dan Blocker, the popular actor known for playing Hose, the right to watch Bonanza made a changing lives. He made the choice to move his family to a peaceful and beautiful area of Switzerland, wants to get away to a quiet place from the trouble but still far away. Blocker's dedication to Bonanza stayed the same. Strong, and he often went back to the US, was determined to bring the Western classic to life for people who loved. He was getting as the show's last seasons wrapped up, but Blocker's health started to wane. He was told he had gallstones, a condition that is common but needed surgery. Blocker went through what should have been a normal process to at first take out his gallbladder. It looked like the surgery worked. Looked like he was getting better, and his loved people let out a sigh of relief, but in a cruel turn of events, Blocker had a pulmonary embolism, is a sudden problem. This sudden blood clot killed the person. And the death of Dan Blocker shocked everyone. A wave of sadness through his family and friends and fans. Hearing about his death around the world shook the fans and co-stars in entertainment world. Mourned a man who was known for more than just his EMP, having a strong physical presence and stunning, if not